Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down complex situations using the original source material. Today, we're going to dive into a story about how a nonprofit's best intentions ended up causing a complete breakdown in trust. And it all came down to a single missing policy.
Now, this isn't just some hypothetical question. This is the real-life crisis that hit the Crime Victim Support Center when two parents, who were completely estranged, both grieving the murder of their son, reached out for help from the exact same agency.
Okay, so our story kicks off on a Monday morning. An advocate at the Crime Victim Support Center, let's call it the CVSC, gets a message about a murdered young man named Derek Taft. But here's the thing. It's not just one call for help. It's two, one from his mom and one from his dad.
To really get what's going on here, you have to understand the family's backstory. John and Catherine Taft's marriage fell apart in a really bitter divorce right around their son Derek's second birthday. It was ugly. Lots of fights about money, tons of accusations. For years, they basically didn't speak. All that history of mistrust, it's about to complicate everything.
So, fast forward to today. Both parents are, of course, absolutely shattered by grief, and now they're facing the unexpected cost of a funeral. So what do? Separately, without the other knowing, they both call the CVSC hotline. They have the exact same need, but their history means they are on a total collision course.
And this is where Laura Green comes in. She's a dedicated victim advocate at the center, and you guessed it, the messages from both parents land right on her desk. She's now the one who has to figure out how to handle these two competing calls from two people who are united by this horrible tragedy, but, well, divided by pretty much everything else.
Laura knew right away this was a potential minefield, so she did the responsible thing. She started digging for a policy. She went through all the training manuals, the official procedures, she even pulled up an old copy of the Code of Ethics, and she found absolutely nothing. There was no playbook for how to handle estranged family members.
So, with no policy to fall back on, she was completely on her own. She basically saw three ways this could go. One, she could help one parent and just turn the other away, which, feels totally unfair. Two, she could assign one of them to a different advocate. Or three, she could try to handle both of them herself. And let me tell you, every single one of those options was loaded with risk.
And this is the real heart of the problem, isn't it? When there's no official rule book, the right call isn't a simple matter of following procedure. The entire decision falls on the personal and professional judgment of Laura and her supervisor. Talk about pressure.
So, let's see how they tried to figure this out. Laura takes the whole mess to her executive director, Christine Hayden, so they can try to navigate this uncharted territory together.
And this really shows you the tightrope they were walking. On the one hand, if Laura handles both cases, she can make sure both parents get the exact same information, which is fair. But on the other hand, because of confidentiality, she can't tell one she's talking to the other, and that could easily look like she's being deceptive, totally destroying any trust she's trying to build. And this is such a smart move by Christine, the supervisor. She shifts the focus. It's not just about what the organization can do, logistically. She asks Laura how it makes her feel. It becomes about what Laura, as a professional, feels is the right and ethical thing to do.
As if things weren't tricky enough, there's this state compensation fund. This fund can give up to $5,000 for funeral expenses, which is huge. But here's the catch. The money only goes to the person who actually signs the contract with the funeral home. That one little detail just raised the stakes dramatically.
Okay, so after talking it all through, they finally land on a plan. Laura is going to work with both John and Catherine. She'll give them the exact same information about the money, and she'll stick to the agency's confidentiality policy like glue. They really believe this was the most ethical and the most fair way to handle it. So Laura takes their carefully thought-out, well-intentioned plan and puts it into action. But the real world, especially when you're dealing with raw grief and years of bad blood, is rarely that neat and tidy.
First up, Laura calls the mother, Catherine Taft. She very carefully walks her through the whole compensation process and really makes a point to explain the confidentiality rules. Catherine says she gets it, she understands the need for discretion.
But then, the one thing they couldn't control happens. As soon as Catherine hangs up the phone with Laura, she immediately calls her ex-husband, John, and she tells him everything about her conversation with the advocate.
So you can imagine Laura, right? She's completely unaware of this, and she makes her next call to the father, Mr. Taft. She's planning to give him the same careful speech she gave his ex-wife, but instead, she walks straight into a buzzsaw. He already knows she talked to Catherine, and he is furious.
He feels like he's being played, not helped.
And just like that, their entire plan collapses. John accuses Laura of the exact things she and Christine were so worried about, a conflict of interest and being deceptive. Any chance of building trust was just gone, right out the window. And now he's demanding to speak to her boss.
So yeah, the whole case just completely imploded. But the wreckage of this situation actually provides some incredibly valuable lessons for any organization that deals with people in crisis.
So why does this all matter? You see, the real problem here wasn't one person's bad judgment. It was a failure of the organization. Having a clear policy on conflicts isn't just red tape, it's a lifeline. It gives an advocate a protocol to follow so they don't have to invent a solution in the middle of a crisis. And that policy needs to be backed up with real training, not just a once-a-year thing, but hands-on practice for these exact kinds of messes. This whole thing also screams for de-escalation training. Maybe if Laura had the tools to manage an angry, grieving client, the conversation could have gone differently. And finally, it just shows you that constant tug-of-war between confidentiality and transparency. Their plan leaned on confidentiality, but to the client, it just looks secretive.
Ultimately, it all comes down to this number: 0. This entire crisis, all the anger, the mistrust, it was all set in motion because the organization had exactly 0 official procedures for a scenario that, let's be honest, was bound to happen eventually. Good people were left to improvise when what they really needed was a clear, pre-approved plan.
And this leaves us with a final, really challenging question. Laura and Christine genuinely tried their best to do the right thing. They were thoughtful, they were careful, they were ethical, and it still wasn't enough. It forces us to look at that huge gap between just intending to do good and actually building the structures and policies you need to make good happen.